Today we are going to be painting the Guntank model from Gundam Assemble. Now this is a great classic mecha design, and the first step is a good base coat. We're going to start with the parts of the model that are hardest to reach. That means less worrying about bumping already painted surfaces later, but don't worry if you mess up. You can always go back and paint over any mistakes. Mix the paint on your palette with a little water to make sure the colors go on smooth. Remember that 2 thin coats will always look better than 1 thick lumpy one. The number 1 rule with base coats is to take your time and get it right. You'll thank yourself for it when you get to the later steps. I decided to use a black speed paint for the tank treads. This type of paint is a little different than regular base paint and goes on more like an ink wash. You'll want to apply it one section at a time and make sure it's not pooling anywhere before moving on. If you get too much on an area, just touch the tip of a dry brush to the spot and siphon it away. I like the way the speed paint worked on the treads, but I didn't love the way it made the arms and the back look, so I went ahead and went over it with some regular black and regular silver to change it up a bit. I think it turned out way better this way. Now it's time to add some shading to the Guntank. I'm using a dark brown ink wash to enhance the shadows and lines on the model and bring down the brightness of the base coat a little bit. Use a brush with soft bristles to apply a good amount of the wash to one section at a time. The ink wash will run down the model, collecting in lines and recesses. This is what we want, but you will see ink pooling towards the bottom of each area. Dry the brush you've been using on a paper towel and use it to soak up the excess. If you wait too long, you'll get some nasty circles of dry ink around where the pool was, so be vigilant. You can always paint over it, but it's better to avoid if possible. That said, it happens to everybody, so don't worry if it takes some practice to get right. The shading step is going to take a while to dry, so that's the perfect time to start the base coat on another Mini. Either way, take it easy and make sure the wash is completely dry before moving on. Next, I'm adding some highlights. This is where detail is added to the model and brings out the three-dimensionality of the miniature. I actually like to go back in with the original base coat colors and reapply them to raised areas on the model. This enhances the shading I just did and gives me a good idea of where to focus during highlighting. Each Mini will usually require a variety of highlighting techniques. Here are the ones that I used on the Guntank. Layering involves using thin layers of paint to either transition between colors or bring up the brightness in one area in particular. Edge highlighting involves using the side of a small brush to put a strong line right on, you guessed it, the edge of a part of your Mini. Dry brushing is probably the most common highlighting technique and the easiest to start with. To do it, get a little paint on a brush with very stiff bristles. Wipe most of the paint off on a paper towel, then lightly brush back and forth across your Mini and watch as the edges and raised areas catch the paint and the model comes to life. It's kind of magical. Just make sure you have something to test the brush on first to make sure you've wiped enough paint off. Once again, take your time and don't stress about little mistakes. I decided to add some gloss varnish to the canopy of the pilot's seat. I think it enhances the glass look, but it's totally optional. If you want to do something like this, just make sure you stay inside the lines, since anything you touch with the varnish will become shiny. I'm finishing the model with a sandy terrain paint. It's pretty much just acrylic paint with sand in it, and it works great as a simple way to add a final bit of realism to your Mini. Make sure when you're applying it to push it up against the feet, or treads in this case, of the model. We want the Guntank to be in the terrain, not just floating above it. You can go crazy with bases, rocks, tiny trees. I've even done beach bases with a transparent water effect. I wanted to keep these simple though, so desert combat it is. I put some of the same ink wash we used for shading on the terrain to kind of achieve the same effect. It's dry now, so it's time for a final bit of dry brushing. This time I'm going with a very light tan color to hit the higher peaks of the sand and make it look a bit more 3D. Don't go totally even with the dry brushing for this step. A little unevenness makes the terrain look more natural. And finally, one last step. I recommend painting the sides of the base pure black. It usually takes about 2 coats to look smooth, but it gives the models a very professional look when they're on the game table. I really enjoyed painting this miniature. Guntank is such a classic mecha design. It occupies such a interesting part in the Gundam universe and the Gundam pantheon, if you will. And so I'm really, really glad that we got a miniature of this. They could have easily skipped it. They could have said, "Oh, well, Guntank, you know, people are more interested in the big mobile suits, the famous ones." But the lowly Guntank deserves a lot of praise too. I think I'm not touching the bottom at the moment because that black isn't totally dry yet. But yeah, I really love how this one turned out. I hope this guide helped you out. If it did, let me know in the comments. If it didn't, let me know what you would like to see instead of what we talked about here. Either way, happy painting. Share your miniatures with me. I would love to see them, and we'll see you next time.